Welcome to the Root of All Broth. I'm Kathleen Hill, and this is the show where we talk about the inspirations behind the foods that we cook. Today we are celebrating none other than our separation from King George, the 4th of July. It's coming up next weekend, so we thought we'd give you some time to prepare by creating some wonderful recipes. You can check out last week. We did a baked bean recipe that you can use, and now we're going to do an even more exciting recipe for you today. When we think about celebrating independence, we think about switching from tea to coffee, we think about wonderful fireworks, and I like to think it was the day that the barbecue was born. So for today's episode, we're cooking up my husband's wonderful ribs. Let's get cooking. So today I have a special guest. I think you've seen his hands, I know you've seen his work. It's my husband, Stephen, and our wonderful cameraman and co-owner of the Root of All Broth. And today he's going to be walking you through his wonderful rib recipe. So I'm going to give it to you, Steve.
Thank you. So the first thing we're going to have to do is light the grill. I like to use matchlight charcoal, but you can use whatever you like. Matchlight, I've always found lights the easiest, but if you have one of these nifty charcoal chimneys, it lights anything pretty efficiently. So you put your charcoal on top, 2 or 3 pieces of newspaper on the bottom. Make sure you don't overload the bottom because you need to have some air circulation or else it won't light. Now all we have to do is wait. It'll take 30 to 45 minutes for the coals to get hot enough to cook the ribs on, but while we're letting that heat up, let's go inside and get started on the meat. So we're using pork back ribs for this recipe because that's what my dad always used. Being from Louisiana, most people think in barbecue down there it's all beef, but you know, I like Memphis barbecue and Kansas City, which is mostly pork, and that's what my dad likes, so that's what I'm going to go with. So the way he always marinated them was to start with Italian dressing. This is wishbone. You can use whatever kind you like, but this is what my dad always used when I was growing up, so that's what I use. You just kind of eyeball it. You don't have to saturate it, but you want to make sure you get enough on there to cover it. After that, you add Worcestershire sauce. Then seasoning salt. Make sure you get a nice even coat with the salt on it. And we'll do the other side in a second. Now this is very important. This ingredient, Cavender's Greek seasoning, is not easy to find outside of the South. Down there it's pretty much everywhere, but if you live up north or out west, you may have trouble finding it. You can get a close approximation if you look up the ingredients online, but nothing beats having the actual product. So once you get those 4 ingredients on the ribs, I'm just going to flip it over and do the same thing again. So every time I grill, I generally like to have a drink. And today I'll be showing you how to make one of my favorites, an old-fashioned. It's one of the simplest cocktails out there, and some people even consider it the original cocktail. Just take a rocks glass, add 1 tablespoon of sugar, Angostura bitters, 5 or 6 dashes of that, ounce and a half, 2 ounces of bourbon. This is Knob Creek Single Barrel Reserve. It's 120 proof, which is pretty stout for bourbon, but just so happens to be my favorite, so that's what I like to use. Give it a stir to start dissolving the sugar. If you want, you could even use simple syrup instead of granulated sugar if that's easier. Don't have to stir it much just to get started. You can add ice. Now, I like to use 1 large cube of ice. You can use cracked ice, cubed ice, whatever you have available. but I just like having a single large ice cube in there because it gives it a nice look, and as it melts, the water will dilute the bourbon, mellowing the drink, much like it said that it's to mellow your mood at the end of the day after work. And there you have it, classic old-fashioned, just sugar, bitters, bourbon, and ice. So it's been about 45 minutes. Coals are nice and hot now. When you put the meat on, what you're going to want to do is cook it off the heat. So see how we have the coals to one side of the grill? We're going to put the meat not over the coals, but over the part of the grill that's not underneath. Not over the top, I guess. And you're going to want to cook them bone side down. We're going to leave these for 5 to 10 minutes before we flip them, but we'll come back out here in a minute. So the grills have been on for 10 minutes now. Generally what I like to do is to cook them bone side down for 10 minutes, flip them, cook them meat side down for 5 minutes. So I'm going to flip them. And close them back up. So it's been about another 5 minutes. As you can see, even now, it's starting to pull back from the bone here. We're going to flip them again because you don't want the meat side to burn. And about every other time you flip them, you're going to want to baste it with whatever marinade you have left over. I'm just going to take what's here in the pan and just sort of brush it on. Because you don't want them to dry out as they cook either. If you run out of marinade towards the end, what my dad always did was he used just a little bit of Worcestershire. But make sure you don't overdo it, because the first time I cooked ribs, I put Worcestershire to baste them every time, and they came out way too spicy and terrible. So don't do that. So we're going to leave them bone side down for another 10 minutes. Flip them another 5, and you're going to keep doing that for about 40 to 45 minutes, depending on the size of the ribs. Like I said, these are small, they'll cook pretty quickly, but anyway, you're going to look anywhere from 35 to 45 minutes total cooking time for the ribs.
And there you have it. It's these wonderful ribs. We're serving it with the Boston baked beans and some wonderful corn out of the oven. We hope that you use this recipe for the 4th of July or whenever you're craving some ribs. We hope that you hit that subscribe button more though, and also ring that bell for notifications, and we just thank you for being here today.